So this is a big mix. Just trying to understand the audience. How many here know are regular practitioners of some type of yoga? Part of the background of what I'm speaking about comes from, I guess you could call it, the ancient yoga text called Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is a text that one of the things it does, it takes one through the yoga ladder to stages of karma yoga, meditation yoga, dhyan yoga, etc., etc. So that's the background of a lot of what I'll be speaking about comes from, but it's not just class, it's just sharing. The concept of what we're going to be spending time together doing, community up in the mountains in the eastern part of the United States. You know geography, it's Pennsylvania, but it's a very nice farm community, and people that really don't know anything about anything, through social media, they come to know about the event. So they come. Maybe some of you, same thing happened. Okay. So this topic has been presented a few times. And so it's like fourth, fifth time that I've made this presentation on. My experience is there are two things that younger generation people are especially concerned about. Relationships is one, and dealing with negative emotions is another. Big one, two big topics. So that's why this topic was selected. It's about relationships. And one of the dimensions of relationships, when they're wholesome, is there's respect, mutual respect. So this is the fabric of relationships, respect. That's the topic. And so we're going to do part one. That's this part one. And then we'll be doing these other ones later. So there's a nice graphic to show respect, and when it's genuine, not just cosmetic, that it is an essential part of any relationship. So we'll start on the negative side. Disrespect is the weapon of the weak. This is the title of a book written by a lady that probably has been on the receiving end, but certainly the studying end of weakness and disrespect go well together. Or say the opposite, strength and respect go well together. No, we'll be discussing the topic in many different ways. Hurtful disrespect is hurtful to wholesome living, and ultimately to spiritual development. So the frame we're heading towards spiritual well-being. There's a nice saying, maybe you've heard it before, from spiritual well-being, material well-being follows. Like a shadow follows the object that casts the shadow. but just spiritual well-being has as a natural byproduct, or part of it, is material well-being. Material well-being doesn't mean you got lots of money. Material well-being means you have wholesome relationships. That makes life meaningful. And when relationships are not meaningful, life is not meaningful. So a lady who's a researcher, and she's a very gifted speaker and writer. You'll see her name a few times. Brené Brown. Shame, blame, disrespect, betrayal, and the withholding of affection damage the roots from which love grows. Love can only survive these injuries if they are acknowledged, healed, and reared. She's a gifted personality. There's some things that everyone wants. Everyone wants happiness. We don't want unhappiness. We want happiness. And we want to love and be loved. It's just intrinsic to our being. So therefore, this discussion of love, it's not the romance kind, it's the meaningful, wholesome kind of relationship with another. And respect is essential, and disrespect, she speaks a lot and deals a lot with blame and shame. Two days ago, I was at NUS, and the topic was the art of meditation, overcoming negative emotions. So I'm not going to review that whole topic, but one slide is a pyramid slide. It's somebody that studies emotion, and at the very, very bottom of the dark emotions is blame and shame. When you're feeling really down, and it's easy just to say the fault is over there, or I'm bad and so feel shame, or shame someone else. Those are darker emotions. And those darker emotions block the heart, or the capacity to have a relationship that is a respectful relationship. Why is this topic important? In the world, I don't know about Singapore, but probably like the rest of the world, there's a lot of issue that goes on between people disrespecting other people, groups of people, racial discrimination and gender discrimination, and putting people down because you're not like me. You get a group of people, and we get groupism. Our group is better than your group, and injustice or harshness in dealings. So it affects a lot of people, and it may not be so much directly impacting you, but to some degree it's impacting everyone of us. But persons that you care about, it's pervasive. Here's a little example. This is an example of the culture of disrespect. So somebody that studies this had a sense that disrespect goes on in a classroom. So they visited a classroom, and the teacher, whose photograph is in the center here, I recently visited a high school that serves an affluent neighborhood in the northeastern state. In a northeast, so this is United States, somewhere northeast. The English teacher was trying to create a more courteous and orderly atmosphere in the classroom. She explained that she would no longer tolerate students interrupting one another or interrupting her, to create an atmosphere of respect. While she was explaining this, a boy in the back of the room belched loudly, purposefully, and then said, "Oh, just shut up." And then the teacher said, "Just see, that's the example of what I'm trying to say, is this is disrespect, and it creates a very improper atmosphere in the classroom for learning." And so that was rude. So then the boy said, "Oh, I'm sorry, please shut up." And the students giggled. There's social reinforcement for being disruptive and disrespectful, and not always, of course, but it's a growing tendency. A growing tendency. And it starts at the top. Now this is of course in America, you may not know so much about these two fellows, but they're opposing candidates in the presidency election. Everyone here knows he's a liar. Do you have any idea what this clown is doing? And then the other one is pointing the finger. You could take the 5 worst presidents in American history, put them together, and they would not have done as much damage as Joe Biden has done to our nation in just a few short years, not even close. So it's like blaming, this is the Brene Brown, they're the role models. There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita. There's a number of verses in Bhagavad Gita. 700. And one of those verses says, Yad yad acharati shreshtas. Whatever great persons do, others follow. So it starts at the top, and disrespect is the norm. Naming, blaming, etc. And it's like doesn't stop. It goes on and on. Flavors of disrespect. Racial discrimination, misogyny, hatred of women, political or religious persecution, physical, emotional, or intellectual abuse, all three, based on occupation or social status, being disrespectful. That's lack of culture, fundamental, and it breeds unwholesome relationships or broken relationships or no relationships. Then we'll spend a little bit of time on just the lack of respect is a kind of disrespect. Here's a little image. You know, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Just get absorbed in your phone. Then you're not doing any of those things. But that's a sign of disrespect. And how much does it go on? So we're going to have some interactive segments. I think this is leading into one of them. I'm going to ask at certain points that you find 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, sit together and discuss. What are your experiences with the culture of disrespect? What might be the root cause of the culture of disrespect? This is to help us better understand respect. What's it like without it, or disrespect, or just ignoring somebody, or not necessarily sticking your tongue out like that other image, but just being unkind, not paying any attention. Okay, so I'm going to sit down and be quiet. And I'm going to invite you to find somebody or a few somebodies, whatever you're comfortable with, and discuss. want by the root cause of the culture of disrespect. Okay? When you're ready, find somebody. One more minute. Okay, this one's fine. Okay. You're very enthusiastic, but it's time to move on. So if you would be so kind, conclude your topics. You can revisit it later. We're going to move on. Hello? 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 Okay. So we're moving on. According to, as I mentioned, frame of reference of our discussion is going to be Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita was written, well, it was spoken 5,000 years ago, and then later it was written. They didn't have a recording device, but Vyasadeva compiled all the Vedic literature. And I'm going to show you a text from the Vedic literature that says what's the root cause was behind disrespect. It's our dear friend, false ego. Ooh. This is from a section of Srimad Bhagavatam where Krishna, instead of speaking to Arjuna, as he does in Bhagavad Gita, it's Krishna speaking to another. His name is Uddhava. It's a really nice section. So the verse, Spardha Tira Karaha, rivalry, envy, and abusiveness arise from ahankar, false ego. That's what this word is here, ahankar. False ego, our dear friend. So here's the translation. We, conditioned souls, tend to feel rivalry toward our equals, envy toward our superiors, and desire to belittle our subordinates. These contaminated propensities, along with their very basis, false ego, can be quickly vanquished by meditating upon the Supreme within every living being. So there's the cause and the solution, both within one verse. There's socially, there are persons that are elder to us or in some way superior to us, more learned than us, more something than us. There's superiors, there's peers, and there's subordinates. And when the heart is impure, then there's this negativity resting upon false ego, disrespect towards superiors, peers, and subordinates. And the cure is meditating upon the Supreme within every living being. It's yoga. Yoga, one part of yoga is what the body does. Asanas and pranayama. Some of you that practice yoga, you know those two terms. Body postures and breathing exercise. They're fundamental parts of the physical part of yoga. And then there's the meditational part of yoga. The purpose of those two principles is to make the body calm and balanced, the life air within the body balanced, so that one can stay fixed in concentration. So there's techniques of fixing concentration. meditating on a candle, meditating on a mandala, a geometric pattern, meditating on something. So the mind becomes steady and fixed. And then ultimately that principle of fixing the mind is to be fixed upon the Supreme. Techniques are headed in that, that's where the train is going. You get on the yoga train, that's where the destination is. It's like, getting in a car, and first thing you do is you put your destination in your GPS. Supposing you don't put the destination into the GPS, it can tell you where you are, but it won't tell you how to get to where you want to go. So it's good to know where you want to go. And this topic is respect. Relationships that are wholesome, resting upon respect. If that's the train, relationships that are meaningful, wholesome, loving exchange is mutually, this is how to get there. And the obstacle is our dear friend, false ego. Very dear to us, very near to us. Got a tight grip on us. And so knowing what false ego is important. It's subtle, but it's described in Bhagavad Gita. Look at that, there's false ego. And resting upon false ego, rivalry, envy, and abusiveness with equals, with superiors, with subordinates. Okay? Intrinsic value. What's intrinsic value resting on? It's not resting on false ego, it's resting on who we really are. Express that appreciation through words and deeds. That's where it comes from, and then there's the behavior. There's the affective part, the cognitive part, affective part, and action part. I don't know if that's here in this presentation. Okay. I'll go back. There's a gentleman from Google who gave a TED Talk. And his TED Talk was how to make a great company. And there's the material idea of a great company, and then there's the better than the material idea of a great company. And his talk was saying, where there's compassion at the heart of the person driving the company, you're going to get the best company, because there's the affective, there's the cognitive part, the affective part, and the motivational part. When you really care about another beyond the cosmetic, I can get something from them, but you care about the other because of their intrinsic worth, you're going to have a better company. You're going to perform better. You're going to be more attractive to people who want to do like you're doing, because it's just human nature. Anyway, it was a nice TED Talk. And it's true. Creating a culture of respect. This is resting upon this understanding from spiritual well-being. Material well-being follows, like a shadow follows the object that's casting the shadow. When you move the object, you want the shadow to move? Move the object that's casting the shadow. And spiritual well-being is the object, and the shadow is material well-being. Material well-being follows spiritual well-being. Okay, so to advance in spiritual consciousness, what to speak of simply being happy in life, we must cultivate the quality of genuine respect for others, not the cosmetic kind. Offering respectful gestures, trying to focus and express appreciation for some of their good qualities, and when possible, taking the opportunity to render some direct and humble service to them. These are some of the positive and potent ways of dissolving negative feelings in the heart. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking of somebody I knew when I was in high school. And to somebody that I knew in high school, it was a consistent behavior. When there was somebody in a group who were walking along or riding in a car and somebody got out in different places, they would say some words of profound appreciation of that person that just left our company. And always, always, always. So they didn't always say it directly to the person, but they said it about the person, the culture of respect. And it had an impact. I mean, to this day, that was a few years ago. It has an impact. The culture of respect has an impact. It sets an example for others. And then when there's relationships, then they're at least in the intrinsic worth department, this person is valuable. Try it. Somebody does something nice, and you compliment them. You can compliment them personally, you can compliment them publicly, but express something and then do something, because there's some intrinsic worth inside there. And it generates, if you're carrying that culture, it generates relationships that your life is involved with respect. Now here we are, here's Brene Brown again. So one of her big things is not false ego kinds of self-respect, but the other kind, the affective kind of self-respect. And respecting others starts with respecting oneself. You go the negative. If someone feels, oh, I'm unworthy, or I'm no good, or I always blow it, or something, I'm always last, I'm just incompetent. You put yourself down like that. The intrinsic worth isn't going to come out because you're suppressing it. You don't have to pump yourself up or pretend that you're something that you're not, but there's potential awaiting in each of us. I don't think it's in this presentation, but one of my authors that I really like a lot is Viktor Frankl. Anybody heard his name before? Viktor Frankl? One. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish man in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. For the whole duration of the war, he was in a concentration camp and he survived. And when he was on the other side of the concentration camp, when the war was over, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It's a very popular book. It's been reprinted at least 19 times for two reasons. It's really skinny, and it has profound statements. So his situation was, he was confined by circumstances that he couldn't do anything about. And he describes in the book, it was torturous, purposefully, intimidating, malicious torture, without going into the detail of it. Even for the people that weren't sent to the gas, done in such a way that they were intimidated and petrified, and who knows what their nervous system was going through, living in a concentration camp, intimidated. Here's a little example. One of the things that would happen every day was a guard would come along, and the people, that their prison cell was a corrugated box that had a chain on it, and you come and rattle the chain. And go to the next one, rattle the chain. Maybe today's your day, rattle the chain. And then some days, it was somebody's day. They not just rattled the chain, but they opened the lock, pulled the chain out, grabbed the person, and everyone could hear them scream, but they're being dragged off to the gas chamber and gassed. And then the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. So this man, by profession, was a psychiatrist. What maintained and sustained his life was what he wrote in his book. What man needs is not release from circumstances that are beyond their control. Some things we can do about our circumstances, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about your circumstances. What man needs is not release from those circumstances by some means or another. What man needs is, what a wholesome person needs is a potential awaiting for them to be fulfilled. Your GPS. Each of us has whatever we have. The package is whatever it is, but there's some intrinsic worth within each person. Try to discern what that is for each of us, and go there. Invest energy. So that's what he did. While he was in this prison, this concentration camp, he was preparing in his mind how to help people on the other side of the concentration camp, how to deal with negative emotions that arise from circumstances there's nothing you can do about it. How to help those people. It's a very good book. It has a lot of wisdom in it. So, he was treating himself with dignity and respect, although the circumstance was like an animal. He was treated by animals like an animal was treated by another animal. A predator treats the prey. Really cruel. But it didn't get to him. I mean, he describes, here's a detail. He describes one day was his day. They not just rattled the chain, but they unlocked the lock and pulled the chain and started dragging him off to the gas chamber. Most people would scream, everyone could hear them scream. He didn't scream. What happened was, there was some noise over there, and then the guard left him standing in the middle of the field to go deal with whatever that was over there. And by the time it was dealt with, it was time to go back into his little cell. So he put him back in his cell, put the chain on, and he survived by, you can say, divine intervention. He describes, I was able to maintain sanity and purpose because there was a purpose awaiting for me to be fulfilled. That's this intrinsic worth. We're not necessarily going to be a book author on how to help people like that. But whatever your gift is, or gifts, plural, see what they are, introspect, see what they are, and help grow them. Little by little, by little, by little, by little. Even in circumstances that are difficult, little by little, by little. If I don't put value on my work or my time, neither will the person I'm helping. Boundaries are a function of self-respect and self-love. That is another topic. So this says the same thing on the other side. Respecting the worth of others starts with accepting our own self-worth, fully acknowledging with implicit honesty our shortcomings, faults, etc. Intrinsic self-worth doesn't mean you're a perfect person. It means there's something inside, a potential within you that's awaiting to be fulfilled. And there's this nice saying about acceptance of our own self-worth. This is statement over here. Here she is again, Brene Brown. The gifts have been from back. This is a book. If you're interested, that's the title of the book. Gifts of Imperfection. And it was expressed in a TED Talk. You can look up her name, vulnerability, and you'll find her message. It's good. It's Good message. Now we're going to the spiritual perspective of self-worth and who's the real self. So this is a photograph without showing the presence of the soul. This is showing there's a presence of the soul. There's diversity of culture, nationality, color, etc., etc. And everyone, there's the sameness. Spiritual vision is to see the sameness on the spiritual platform within variety of things on the outside. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7. One who views all living entities with the idea that I am present, Krishna is speaking, that I am present, Krishna is speaking, Krishna is present within each, and who, by taking shelter of this divine knowledge, offers due respect to everyone, is considered actually wise. Such a man sees equally. Then the verse goes on saying there's these two opposites, saint and outcast, thief and charitable person, sun, tiny spark of fire, gentle and cruel. Here's a nice lady, African-American lady, a celebrity for some, Queen Mother Moore, who faced a lot of racial discrimination. There's one of her young persons being mentored by her. And here's her statement. As a staunch freedom fighter for several decades, I've seen the endless futility of material struggles, many of which I concede arise from falsely identifying with the type and complexion of our bodies. It's called false ego. Through the Bhagavad Gita, I found solace. We are not our bodies, but eternal spirit souls that can occupy limitless types of bodies. This knowledge makes perfect sense to me, and I'm glad to finally find something that has such a resounding ring of truth to it. So she was on the receiving end of racial discrimination like anything, and it was not pleasant to be on the receiving end of such a thing. But she overcame it by the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Now, how to create a culture of respect? That's a good question. This painting is a painting showing a dog here who was traveling along with a group of people. If you hear geography in India, a group of people were coming to visit Jagannath Puri. Jagannath Puri is a place where they have a big festival. Hundreds of thousands of people come every year for a big festival. And it's along the eastern coast of India by the sea, halfway down. And there's a group of people that came every year, several hundred, 400 people came all the way from Bengal, which is kind of north. It took like a couple of weeks by foot to get to that location. And there was one person who was kind of like a village elder type person. Shivananda Sain was his name, and he took care of everything. Their meals, their accommodation, dealing with bandits, dealing with sometimes different governance people. They had to cross rivers and get permits and give money. And so he just took care of everything, like a father took care of 400 people. 2-3 week journey by foot. And one of the things that he did was when it was time for evening meal, he made sure that everyone had something to eat. And as they were traveling, there was a street dog that had no master. And the street dog found friendship with this group of travelers. So he, Shivananda Sain, made sure that this dog that started following them all the way would get his meal every evening. And one evening he didn't show up for his meal. He sent 10 men, go find the dog. He couldn't find him. He felt really bad. And when he got to Puri, this is what he saw. He saw the dog, and he saw Lord Chaitanya, pictured here, Lord Chaitanya was the person they were wanting to come spend some time with. He was a sannyasi, a renowned order, very elevated person. And so Lord Chaitanya was asking the dog, commanding the dog, chant. And the dog would chant, Hare Krishna. And then Lord Chaitanya threw him some coconut pulp. And that's what the painting is showing. He's chewing some coconut. Then again, chant, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. More coconut pulp. And when Shivananda Sain came on the scene, and there's the dog. He got to Puri before they did. Not only got to Puri before they did, but he got the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, got a dog to chant Hare Krishna. And he threw him some coconut pulp. So he, Shivananda Sain, is offering his respect to the dog. There was an earlier verse I showed you. This is from Uddhava Gita. Disregarding the ridicule of one's companions, one should give up the bodily conception and its accompanying embarrassment. One should offer obeisances before all, even the dogs, outcasts, cows, and asses, falling flat on the ground like a rod. Novel idea. And over there, that's what Shivananda Sain did. He was on the platform beyond the bodily conception. He was taking care of the dog like he would take care of his own son or daughter, his own family member. And when the dog was missing, he was really concerned. But then when he saw the dog getting mercy, he's offering respect to him like this. He was offering respect before that in an appropriate manner, caring for him like a family member, or like a village elder will look after anybody. Okay, almost done. On the left is respect, and there's 7 ways of showing respect. This is when it's there, how to express it. Reach out and ask for another's input and opinions. Expect great things from people and let them know it. Whoops. Show interest in them. Pride, that is, encourage them, help them feel you can do it, let me help you, etc., etc. Exemplify the behavior you wish to see in others, the role model setting. Care about them as people, not just as workers. Thank them for what they do. So that's the acronym for each of these. And here's what not to do. There's a celebrity, people taking pictures of the celebrity. Who should you respect? In one sense, everyone, because there's that spark of life within everyone. Conventional respect goes to the elderly, someone who is a community leader or your parent, someone who has knowledge, somebody that has spiritual realization, not based upon fame, wealth, beauty, and other things like that. Respect for the right reason. In part 3, I hope we get there, gradations of respect, how to calibrate gradations of respect. Supposing someone is like this fellow, got a knife behind his back, and you know it. What do? You don't make friendship with such people. But don't be disrespectful. Show respect to people even when they don't deserve it. Respect is a reflection of your character, not theirs. Isn't that a good one? I'll read it again. Respect is a reflection of your character, not theirs. It's that, material well-being follows behind spiritual well-being. Like a shadow is cast by the object that's casting the shadow. So when there's spiritual well-being, when there is respect, then it carries forward in It's a display of your good character. Okay, last. Some of you may not be familiar with Bhagavad Gita, but I've been practicing the teachings of Bhagavad Gita for a major portion of my life. Like full time, for over 50 years, full time. So there's a person I know who's a teacher of Bhagavad Gita, like he does that full time too. So he was visiting one of our centers and he was giving like an overview of the whole Bhagavad Gita, and this is from his overview. And his overview was just saying this principle of acceptance. When we don't accept an undesirable and undesired event, it becomes anger. When we accept it, it becomes tolerance. Next. When we don't accept uncertainty, it becomes fear. When we accept it, it becomes adventure, which is true. When we don't accept others' bad behavior towards us, it becomes hatred. When we accept it, it becomes forgiveness. When we don't accept others' success, it becomes jealousy. When we accept it, it becomes inspiration. And this is, when he gave his overview of the whole Bhagavad Gita, this was it. Acceptance is the key to handling life well. So, this is very much connected with your own self-worth and thereby being able to see the self-worth of others and acceptance of your own self-worth and the self-worth of others and expressing it, living by that principle. So that's a little summary of our presentation and the topic of Bhagavad Gita. There's a few more slides, but I think I've taken up enough of your time. It's now 11:22. What time is this supposed to end? 11:45. Hey. Well, let's see how the question and answer session goes. And depending on how the question and answer session goes, maybe I'll complete the rest of the slides I didn't complete. But so that the overall review, this is the fabric of any relationship is respect. When there's explicit disrespect or they neglect to offer due respect, that doesn't make for a wholesome relationship or a meaningful relationship. And then the converse is, if you want to have meaningful relationships, we all want to have meaningful relationships. It's a fundamental principle. Without it, you don't have a meaningful relationship with others. Maybe you know some people that are kind of lonely or loners, and they have a problem with being in self-respect and self-dignity and then offering that same respect and dignity to others. So it helps have wholesome relationships, meaningful relationships. Let's see if there's some discussion. I do public speaking a lot, and from experience, the first question is always a little awkward and takes a while, and once the ball starts rolling, then there's like lots of hands up.
You want a first question?
Yeah, just a question. Question.
First of all, it's lovely to see you again. Thank you for being here. It's wonderful that you're here. So, my question is, how do you prepare to accept yourself and have a good conversation with yourself around acceptance?
To respond properly to your question, there's a question that precedes your question, and that is, what is the self? Yesterday evening, that was our topic. Who am I? a significant part of the discussion was centered on a parable or a story by a Greek philosopher who told the story of the ship of Theseus. Anybody, any philosophers in the room know about the ship of Theseus? It's a Greek philosopher to help people understand. I'm going to be responsive to your question, but I have to ask a question to help us understand what we're talking about. The who am I question. To be respecting of myself and how do I go on. So we need to differentiate between who we are and who we aren't. And this persistence of identity is the topic of the ship of Theseus. I'm going to send to you the little video of the ship of Theseus, who am I question, and you can circulate it to others so you have a frame of reference. Some things are always changing, like the body. Medical science says every 7 years, every single cell in the body is completely replaced. How old are you? What's your age? 13. So in 1 more year, you're going to have passed through 2 different bodies, although you're the same person. From medical science perspective. Every single cell in your body is replaced with another cell every 7 years. So maybe there's somebody here that's 21. You got 3 bodies. Maybe somebody a little older than that. So we're changing bodies even in this lifetime, but there's something that's persistent. And that's who we are. Now, we have a covering, or it's not that we don't have a covering. I have a body. It's X number of years old. And everyone he's 13. So each one has a body, and then, so that's the physical, gross physical, and then there's emotion, the mind. Thoughts in the mind, emotions in the mind. And there's other parts too, the intelligence and our dear friend, false ego. So the coverings of who we really are. It's not that we don't have a body. I'm dressed a certain way, and every one of us is dressed a little differently. But the dress is not who we are. The covering is not who we are. Largely, people identify with the covering. I'm fill in the blank. I'm Singaporean, or I'm American, or I'm Indian, or I'm Chinese, or I'm something or something, a man or a woman, or fill in the blank. Identifying with the covering, but that's not who we really are. So we have one. So the first part of self-respect is recognizing who you are. There's the covering. We deal with the covering. We brush our teeth. We take a bath. We put on clean clothes. And we do things that keep the body fit, etc., etc. But that's not who we are. While we do things that are on the physical plane and the mental plane and the intellectual plane, who are we at the end of the day, or at the end of our life, or in the between? So self-respect has everything to do with understanding who you are. Say it negatively. If you don't know who you are, how are you going to have self-respect? Because I don't even know what the self is. And that was our topic yesterday. Who am I? Or who are you? It's a nice topic. So, take a path that helps you come in touch with who you really are. And who you really are is not just your psychophysical makeup. That's a covering. We have a psychophysical makeup, but that's not who we are. So to get to the place of self-respect means or requires going down the path of self-realization, self-discovery, introspection, seeing beyond the change of the mind, the change of the body, the change of the temporary. And what's permanent? What's the unchanging self within? So the more you go in at least directionally, in that direction of introspection, and despite the changes, what's permanent? Is there something that's permanent? Consciousness is permanent. To the different changes of emotion and physical and climate, and there's something, consciousness is there. So the soul is conscious in consciousness. But the more I can recognize who I really am, then I can have some self-respect. Negatively, if I don't know who I really am, how can I have self-respect? It's going to be cosmetic. It's not going to be enduring. That self-respect, the wheel of time turns and it becomes something else. I'm looking at my shortcomings, I'm looking at my deficiencies, and I'm looking at other shortcomings and their deficiencies. And so that's when you're on the cosmetic external side. Self-realization and self-respect go well together. It's the same, as I said 3 times already, here it is the 4th time. From spiritual well-being, material well-being follows. Like a shadow follows the object that's casting the shadow. If you want a shadow to move the object that's casting the shadow. Try to move the shadow without changing the position of the object that's casting the shadow. It's not going to happen. Self-realization is imperative. And no, it takes thoughtfulness, it takes process, it takes wisdom that's guiding the course of your life. And slowly. It doesn't happen like the rising of the sun doesn't happen instantly. It's a gradual process. But go down the path, starts with inquisitiveness, just like your question. How do you cultivate self-respect? You have to know who you are, what the self is. So this little video, it's like 8 minutes long. It's really simple, and it's illustrated, so it's easy to watch. You can watch it a few times. It's the theme is persistence of identity. That's who we really are. Everything's changing. And then there's identity that's unchanging. The mind is changing, our emotions are changing, the body is changing, what's around us is changing, and then there's this place of consciousness is who we really are. And get in touch with it. And as you get in touch with it, that has its own form and feature and activities. That's spiritual activity. But start with ABC. I don't know if this response is satisfying to all of you, but that's my response. Okay. Anyone else? We have a second microphone that you changed the battery, right? The battery is good? The battery is good? Okay, good. Comments, questions? We have 11 minutes. If there's nothing, I'm going to go on to the other slides I didn't cover. In Bhagavad Gita, it's just a little what Bhagavad Gita is a little part of a big, big, big text. The big text is the history of Greater India. And Bhagavad Gita is literally right in the middle. You can say it's a yoga portion of the whole of Bhagavad Gita. And the two main persons in Bhagavad Gita are the speaker and the listener. And the listener, his name is Arjuna. And Arjuna is one of 5 brothers. Arjuna is the middle one. And his elder brother, the eldest in Vedic culture, becomes the successor king. So his father was the king. Yudhishthira is his name. And he's pictured over here on the bottom right. And the person who was a competitor person was his father's brother, who was blind from birth. So he was ineligible to become the king. But the one who was ineligible to become the king, he was really ambitious. He wanted his sons to become king, which meant bumping off the one who's supposed to become the king. Killing. There were murder plots in this history section. This and that and the other. Skullduggery. Bad. Yet, Yudhishthira, the elder of it was to become the next king, he maintained respect for the blind person. What's the natural and common response when addressing a serial attempted murderer? Whoa. Attempted, they didn't get killed, but he didn't personally do it, but he knew that his eldest son was attempting murder multiple times. And he looked the other way, meaning he didn't stop it. He could have stopped it. He didn't stop it because he wanted his sons to become king, and the way for that to happen is to bump off the other guys. So you're not normally respectful to such a person. So since Yudhishthira was respectful, what was the inner strength he had to behave respectfully? Even in the one that was giving the nod to attempted murder. He had something inside himself. He had culture. So here's a quote from Mahabharata, this greater history. King Yudhishthira would enter the palace to pay respects to the elderly. He was always conscious of the great plight of his uncle, that's his father's brother, who was blind, and then his father's brother's wife, Gandhari, and therefore he took all possible care of them in their old age and aggrieved conditions. He never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle and company. That is the nature of a good man and a devotee. A devotee never finds fault with others, but tries to find his own and thus rectify them as far as possible. So it's self-worth. He had character because he had a meaningfulness and a purpose to his own existence. Here's a photograph of our spiritual master standing in line with all of his documents and, to board a plane, just like he's one of us. Sometimes we feel, yeah, but I'm not being respected. So there's a Manu Samhita is a text that teaches proper conduct. That's what Manu Samhita is. Proper conduct text. The do's and the don'ts of proper conduct. Here's the quote. Throughout his life, a thoughtful individual should consider material prestige to be like poison and dishonor to be like nectar. After all, if one learns to tolerate dishonor, then his agitation will subside, and he will happily sleep, happily wake, and happily move about. That person who insults him will, as a result of his sin, become embarrassed, and his happiness in this and the next life will be vanquished. So there's merit that goes to one who is respectful. even there's obstacle to being respectful. It's the same message as in Bhagavad Gita. And the message in Bhagavad Gita is this. In this world, there's duality. Sometimes it's day, sometimes it's night. Sometimes it's winter, sometimes it's summer. Sometimes there's honor, sometimes there's dishonor. Sometimes you're honored when you don't deserve it. Sometimes you're dishonored when you don't deserve it. But if you remain equipoise in the course of all of that, and you tolerate the duality, you're situated in another place of consciousness. Place that's beyond duality, place that's beyond the temporary. That's yoga. Okay. Okay, this is a little video. If there's discussion, I'll stop this because we have 3 minutes. Any question, comment? Now I'm going to go to a little video. Okay. Well, like I said,
You're actually bringing some kind of an array of light to the right place. Regardless of race, religion, of nationality, we're all brothers and sisters.
If I see this person, this soul, struggling just like I'm struggling in my body, I have a reason to love you. That's deep. His words carry so much power. It's a full expression of his heart that comes through.
That's a little documentary on the founder, the translator and commentator on Bhagavad Gita. And that person at the very beginning, you probably don't recognize him, but he's both a famous and infamous person. Allen Ginsberg, during the 1960s, was celebrated for 2 or 3 things. One, he was a big advocate of LSD. And second was his poetry. When he was on an LSD trip, he would write poetry called stream of consciousness poetry. And he was a popular guy. He was a celebrity. And the third thing is he had interest in Indian spirituality. So he liked mantra chanting, and he liked Prabhupada, the person who you saw the images of. Okay. We have 2 minutes. The first time I met my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, was at the university where I was an undergraduate student. Just a little anecdotal, and then we're going to end. I was walking through the student union building at the university from one side to the other side. I was going to the other side to see a friend. And as I was passing through the student union, I saw a big crowd huddled around the doorway of an assembly hall. And I hadn't seen anything like that, so I was curious what's going on inside. So I kind of wiggled my way through the crowd at the door. And when I went inside, there were 2 people on a stage at a spotlight. One was Allen Ginsberg. And you saw from the little image, he had receding hair, and then hair stuck out like this, looked like Albert Einstein, kind of a hairdo. And really thick glasses. And he was playing bongo drums, 2 drums, and then seated next to him was somebody who I didn't know who he was. It was Prabhupada, the person who became my spiritual master. And what they were doing, they were just singing. And then the intoxicated audience, riding on some drug or another, LSD or whatever it was they were on, they were responding. And it went on for some time. And I was captivated by that sound vibration. And then when the chanting stopped, Prabhupada spoke for a few minutes because people were too intoxicated to tune into anything. So he just spoke very simply, some simple messages. You're not the body. Life is meant to realize who you really are. Take this mantra and it will help you. And here's Bhagavad Gita, and come to our center, which is across the street from the campus. It was it. That was it. And I left. And my life changed just by that sound vibration. I mean, I didn't understand it at the time, but in retrospect, it was a very powerful experience. So it's time to end. Who is our moderator? You want to do some wrap up?
There's no part 3 to the lecture.
Hmm?
There's no part 3 to the lecture, only part
Okay,
1.
okay. No problem.
Not, we have round of applause for Raj. Mark will leave out some cookies if you can come forward.
No, I'll come around. I'll go around. I'll just go around. Just where you are. Then what else what do you want them to do?